want to welcome you to today's presentation on the findings from the Economic Impact Business Survey. I was so excited to see that so many of you cared about the survey because many more people filled out and completed the survey than we expected, so that's wonderful. That tells us that this topic is just as important to you as it is to us. I know our time together is brief, but the good news is that even though we're starting a couple minutes late, we have the room reserved until 3:30, so if you have a question or you want to meet somebody else who's here, you have time to do so afterwards. I want to give a big shout out to our partners at UCI. Thank you, Dean Gould, Raven, Dr. Lester. We couldn't have asked for better partners, so thank you. We all know that 2025 brought us significant changes at the federal level. We saw harsh immigration enforcement tactics and a lot of confusion around tariff policies. As a result, our office got a lot of calls from employees and business owners wondering what's going on. We really felt panic brewing in our community, with people wondering what's going to happen to their workforce, to their customers, their bottom line, their costs. And sadly, the impacts are still going on. Just a couple hours ago, we got reports that there's heavy enforcement actions in downtown Santa Ana. And if you're familiar with downtown Santa Ana, that is a business hub here. So we know that the impacts are continuing. That said, we know immigration policy may not affect everyone directly, but we do know that the economy surely does. And Supervisor Sarmiento wants to better understand how these constant changes and uncertainty are impacting our local businesses. Supervisor Sarmiento and his family have lived in this district for decades, and he's been serving the community for many years. He served as council member and mayor in Santa Ana for 16 years, and he's the third year of his first term here at the Board of Supervisors. And to share more about why we're here and why these findings matter, please help me welcome Supervisor Sarmiento.
Good afternoon, everyone. And Yasi was not paid to sing any of those things, so they were all meaningful and from the heart. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm Vicente Sarmiento, Orange County Supervisor for the 2nd District, and for those of you who don't know, I represent the central part of the county, which is the entire city of Santa Ana, parts of Orange, Anaheim, Tustin, and Garden Grove. We call it home, and we believe that it is an incredible place to live, and I truly appreciate the time you all took, not just to join us here today, but for those of you who responded to the survey. We had so many chambers of commerce, business organizations, large businesses, small businesses respond, which makes the survey finding much better because we hit the threshold, exceeded the threshold, and gave our friends at UCI a lot of material to work with. So we want to thank everybody who pushed out the survey for those as well. But I also want to give an incredible amount of support and thank you to my staff and District 2. I know Yasi heads a very talented team of people in our office that don't just do the work because they're tasked to do it. They do it because they really genuinely care. So thank you to them and to our friends at UCI. You're not in my district, but I still claim. My sisters were anteaters. I'm a bear, so I'm a little up north, but I'm still part of the UC family. So thank you all for all the work that you've done. Let me begin by just sharing a bit of background on why we undertook this economic impact survey and why it's important to understand that we are all touched by federal policies like immigration, even if we're not directly subject to ICE enforcement, excessive tariffs, or rapidly changing federal economic policies ourselves. The effects are broadly felt and affect all our economies that we depend on. Sometimes we forget that Orange County is the 3rd largest county in the state. When combined with other large counties in California, it ranks our state as one of the world's top 10 economies. Key to the economic success of our county is our small businesses. In District 2, there are nearly 33,000 businesses, and we have over 135,000 small businesses in the county, and that's equal to 96% of all Orange County businesses, and they employ close to 44% of our workforce. You know, this past summer was the beginning of a very difficult time for many in our community, especially in my district. We see federal immigration enforcement actions taking place in our neighborhoods, and even a military occupation that took place just blocks from here, where I call home. And where we are sitting here today, just earlier today, a few hours ago, the downtown merchant area, what we call Calle Cuatro, was raided, and people were taken and displaced from their places of work and simply for shopping. So you'll see the streets that are dormant, businesses that are empty, people that are scared, and people that are hiding. That is not the formula for a healthy economy and a healthy workplace. The fear is felt on our streets, in our homes, and in our workplaces. And at the same time, we hear from local businesses about the challenges that they're facing due to the new and changing tariff policies. For many, these pressures were happening all at once, because we know even before the changes that occurred last year, there were already harsh economic pressures on our community. The high cost of housing, the rising cost of healthcare, and the inflationary impacts on groceries. All these stories came to our office, and it became clear we needed to better understand what was happening, not just anecdotally, but with data and analysis. We wanted to understand how federal immigration, new tariff policies, and an unexpected level of fear were affecting all our businesses, workforce decisions, and the ability to plan for our future. You know, I'm a former mayor. I was mayor in Santana for a couple of years and a council member for 12 years prior to that. One of the things I used to talk to businesses about was, what is the most important thing to you? And it was interesting, because I always thought it would be like the cost of permits, the cost of fees. For them, it was predictability. They wanted to understand what the forecast looked like, you know, what they could do to plan for changes. And so I always took that to heart, because you know, what people can do is they can adjust to something that's going to increase or decrease or change. But when things happen in real time and they change, that makes it a very, very difficult way to run a business, employ people, and provide goods and services. So I'm also a former economics major from Berkeley. I was taught by some very talented Nobel laureates. And what they did teach me was that any small change in economic policy has vast and significant impacts. So what we're seeing, and we shouldn't be mistaken, what we're seeing today is a very activist federal economic policy. It is changing the way we do business here, which was a free market system. With tariffs and other economic policies changing, that really does interfere and make it very difficult for small businesses especially to navigate. So on the policy front, what is remarkable and frustrating for me at the same time, that on immigration issues, arguments about cruelty and erosion of constitutional rights no longer seem to carry the day, as many are not touched by the ICE raids or the heightened militarization. But we are all affected by changes in our economy, by issues in our labor force, and by businesses whose success is hurt in the face of uncertainty and unpredictability. So it is my hope that this survey today will dispassionately and analytically shed light on the impacts of these new policies in a language that we can all understand, and help quantify how these policies impact us in our daily lives, the prices we pay for goods, groceries and services, and the job market we face. That's why we partnered with UC Irvine's School of Social Ecology to develop and analyze this survey. From the beginning, we made a commitment to the business owners and leaders who participated that we would share the findings openly once they were available. My hope is that these findings will help inform public policy and help guide us as we look for better ways to support our businesses and our business community as they navigate very real and complex changes. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. John Gould, the Dean of UC Irvine Social Ecology. Dr. Gould is a distinguished scholar in justice policy, social change, and government reform. He has held senior roles at the U.S. Department of Justice and the National Science Foundation, and he became Dean of the School of Social Ecology in 2022. He heads the nation's only School of Social Ecology, an institution established more than 50 years ago to advance socially relevant interdisciplinary research. Under his leadership, the school continues to play a critical role in understanding and responding to complex social issues. Dr. Gould has also helped create and leads the UCI-OC poll, which regularly surveys Orange County residents to better understand pressing legal challenges and identify potential solutions. We are grateful for his leadership and for UCI's partnership in this effort. So please join me in welcoming Dr. John Gould.
Thank you, Supervisor Sarmiento, for that lovely introduction. I'm almost embarrassed by it. It's clear that wherever my mother is, she got you the talking points. So we think of UC Irvine as Orange County's research university. And within that context, the School of Social Ecology is really a translational arm for the university, meaning that we don't just study the problems that affect Orange County and beyond. We try to help find solutions for those problems. And we do it by working in partnership with community groups, community leaders, elected leaders, policymakers, business leaders. That's our bread and butter. And in that context, as the supervisor said, we have created things such as the UCI-OC poll that doesn't just study what people are thinking in the county, as in, well, here's a snapshot of public opinion. When we do the poll, the purpose is to not only understand what people are thinking about big ticket issues that affect our community, but what solutions they've considered, what other solutions they might countenance, and then what are the no-go areas. But that's the beginning, because we then use those results to bring people together to talk about what kinds of solutions are possible given the views of the populace. And in that context, we have recently created something we call the Social Impact Hub in the School of Social Ecology. That is a special unit headed by Raven Greenberg here, who works with our faculty and then with community groups to ensure that we are bringing the best kind of research to the table to help people in the community understand what's happening and to try to come up with solutions. We then were very fortunate, and we feel very fortunate that Supervisor Sarmiento's office reached out to us when there was this question about what has been the effects of immigration enforcement in Orange County and the tariffs. Because we have an opportunity here to bring research to the table to talk about what people's experience has been, how they're feeling about it, and then also what have the effects been. And I need to compliment the supervisor and his staff for the fact that this was a project where we were not asked to do anything other than to bring the best research methods to the table. There has been no thumb on the scale. There has been no request for anything other than where the evidence takes us. And in a moment, I'm going to hand this over to my colleagues to tell you where that evidence takes us. I would encourage you to pay close attention to some of the very important takeaways about how people in the community, particularly our business leaders, feel about what the effects have been on their own businesses, how they're feeling about what the climate is for business in this county going forward this year, and then also some of the empirical data on what have been some of the effects on lost business revenue and lost tax revenue. Again, that is with research methods being brought to the table. There are plenty of people to thank for their involvement in this. Of course, we start with the supervisor and with Yasi, but we also thank all of the business organizations in Orange County who were partners in this work and who helped us get the survey into the hands of real live business owners who could respond to it. And we want to thank all of them for their cooperation in the project. The project really was led by two people. I'm just here to be a nice window dressing on this, but I want to introduce two of them. One is a faculty member, T. William Lester, we call him Bill. We recently were fortunate to recruit him to us from San Jose State, and before that, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Also, as I mentioned, Raven Greenberg, who we were also able to recruit from Duke University, and it only dawned on me when I was about to introduce you that we have UNC and Duke, and you are at opposite ends of the table here. So that is in no way a statement about whether they collaborate well together, but I suppose it is appropriate for your alma maters that you not sit too closely. They are going to be sharing the results from the research. Bill talking about the quantitative data, that's kind of what people are what people are saying in the survey, and then his own analysis on the effects of the activity on business profits. And then Raven's going to be talking about what we heard in some of the individual comments from people. Again, pay close attention to what the takeaways are here. What has been happening in Orange County has affected businesses. And don't take our word for that, because you shouldn't. You should take the word of the business leaders who responded to really good research. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Bill Lester, who will take it from here.
Thank you, Dean Gould. Thank you, everybody. I also want to thank Raven and Yasi for bringing me in this project. It inspired future research, which I'll talk about at the end. But I'm really excited to share our findings. So I'll start with some of our methodology. The survey itself is a joint effort, like you said, between Supervisor Sarmiento's office and the Social Impact Hub, geared towards understanding the impacts of both immigration enforcement and tariffs. We're looking at two different policies. The questions were delivered through an online survey that was distributed via email. It was open for the entire month of September, and business owners and business executives in Orange County were the universe that we're targeting. And there was also over 25 local chambers of commerce and nonprofits that helped distribute the survey. So I just want to put this up here, I can't name them all, but thank you for helping me do this. This is a great example of what we call community engaged research. So you're helping gather the data, and we can sit in our offices and crunch the numbers. So it's very exciting. So just some demographics about who answered the survey. We had about 375 clean, completed responses. Not everybody answered all the questions, but that's basically our end. Slightly more male than female. 70% were born in the US, and 25% of the business owners and respondents were born outside the US. Looking at it by size, majority of them are small businesses, 81%. So that's the majority of our responses. Comparing that to some other government data, distribution is about the same as what we'd see from the census in terms of the business size. The respondents were slightly majority white, 52%, but represent the diversity of Orange County. About 25% of the business owners or respondents were Latino. And we represent really much a wide array of industries. So retail trade was the highest, but we looked at professional scientific services all the way through manufacturing. So I think we're confident that we're representing a broad swath of the type of employers that we have here in Orange County. So now to their overall opinion. So we looked at, again, our immigration enforcement policy that began under the current administration, and then also this tariff policy. Tariff policy writ large, both the uncertainty and the increases of it. But what was the overall opinion? If you took the strongly disapprove, and somewhat disapprove, we get about 55% of business owners disapproving of immigration enforcement policies, and 53% about the tariff policy. So the majority is not agreeing with this policy. So let's dig a little bit more in detail on the immigration policy. Now we're going to do a couple of what we call crosstabs. We're looking at how did the opinions change based on the various demographics. So we looked at by revenue, are big businesses more likely to support or not? The answer is slightly more, but we have a very small N out there for very large, over 50 million in revenue. But really the majority of the small businesses, those with less than 500,000, are saying that they strongly disagree with this policy. So we see that small businesses are slightly more impacted by the policy, at least in terms of their own opinions. This is interesting also, they asked about political orientation. So the respondee was asked, are you liberal, are you conservative, are you somewhat conservative? And then we looked at their preference for immigration policy by this. So not surprisingly, we live in a partisan world. Liberals were way more against this policy, about 85% strongly disagree. or disagree. But even among the people who identify as conservative, we have almost over half disagreeing with these policies. By ethnicity, we looked at the respondents that identified as Hispanic or Latino, and we get to be about 3/4 of that group either disagree or strongly disagree with the immigration policy. But for the non-Hispanic owners, about 50%. So there's a difference there. It's very mirrored by gender as well. We've got 2/3 of female respondent business owners saying that they disagree with immigration policy, or about half for men. And by industry, we've looked at is there a variation in what kind of line of business are you in? Does that affect your opinion about this policy? And it does. We have the education industry, I guess that's my industry, and information technology have much higher rates of disagreeing with this policy than, it was kind of interesting, the manufacturing was about half and half. So then we sort of tried to dig down into, well, how is this immigrant, if you might be opposed to it, how is your business being impacted by this? So we looked at only those who said they were strongly disagree or disagree with the policy, and then looked, how is your business impacted? And it was really things like decreased employee morale, decrease in productivity, less new businesses opening. And then we did ask them about some positive things where did it increase morale? Almost 0% said that. So the people who are being impacted by this policy, they clearly understand why. If your employees can't get to work, or if when they get to work they're stressed out, that becomes an issue. So turning now to the tariff policy. So we asked a very similar set of questions, but now this time it's just on what are your impressions of the tariff policy. So by revenue, the results are very, very close for lots of these. But by revenue, it's small businesses that are strongly disagreeing or disagreeing with the policy, compared to larger businesses that are maybe able to absorb some of these impacts. And we'll have the slides available if I'm going too fast and we want to look at one later, we can make those available to you. By political orientation, similarly, this is a partisan issue. It lines up with our partisan expectations, but not quite to the same degree, right? So liberals are there in blue. They're very opposed to it. They're either strongly opposed or somewhat opposed. We get to about 67%, but not quite as sharp as in the immigration policy. By ethnicity, these results mirror the results for immigration as well, but not quite as to the same extent. So about 2/3 of Hispanic or Latino business owners are saying that they disagree with this policy, whereas about half for non-Hispanic business owners. Similar story with gender. So we're having very similar results. About 2/3 of women-owned businesses are opposed to the tariff policy, compared to about little under half for male-owned businesses. And a similar story with industry. This time, information technology is the most opposed. Well, they're about the same. And I kind of chalk this up as a little bit of aligning with educational attainment, perhaps, of the business owner. And then of those people, same kind of setup, of those people who said they were strongly disapproved or disapproved with the tariff policy, how was it actually impacting their business? And 54% of those folks said it's really it's driving up my prices, the prices of my input costs. So if I'm importing goods from somewhere, and that has to be paid a tariff, it's going to drive up my costs, so that I have to then pass on the high prices to my customers, right? So there's a ripple effect that we're seeing here with the tariffs. But also decreased demand for products and services. So those of our employers here who are perhaps exporting their products, those prices are higher because other countries then would raise the tariff when we raise the tariff. I'm just suspect that might be the case. But also supply chain shortages. So if you can't get in goods or there's irregularity in be able to deliver those goods, that's going to disrupt your business. And the share overall, again, is about 53% disapprove of this policy. And then, I don't have a slide for this, but there's about 15% who are neutral. So don't just say 1 minus 53%, that's how many people approve. The people who approve is about 35%. So we asked also a set of questions about not only how does it affect your business, but what's your impression of how these policies are having an impact on the county overall? So here we're asking the survey respondents to kind of speculate about how they see not just their business, but the overall economy in the Orange County. And we asked the question, how would you describe your feelings about the future of the business in Orange County in the next year. And 65% have a negative outlook. I mean, we asked them to select, are you nervous, negative, or concerned? Those kind of have a negative valence. If you add those up, it's about 65% have a negative outlook about the Orange County business community. We're compared to only 35% that were either excited, which is the lowest, or hopeful or positive. So we're really seeing sort of a dampening effect about the opinion of business in Orange County, as reflected by the survey respondents themselves. And then looking at, in your opinion, how has each of these policies affected the overall economy? So for immigration enforcement, the view is generally that it's having a very negative or somewhat negative effect. It's about 60% of the respondents. And then for tariffs, a very similar number. So both of these policies, we're seeing kind of a parallel impact in terms of how they affect the business climate, or the impressions of the business climate in Orange County. Okay, so now I want to introduce Raven Greenberg, who's going to talk about what I think is actually the most interesting part of our survey, which is the words of business owners themselves. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lester, for the introduction and for sharing all that information. The next few slides are meant to just be additive to some of that, to add a bit more color from the respondents themselves, how our business is actually being impacted in their own words. So with some help from my interns, Yuman and Nastia, who are back there as well, you can raise your hands if you'd like to say hi. We did a thematic analysis of all of the free response questions that we had. So in addition to asking people specifically, yes, no, were you impacted in these ways, we also asked them, is there anything that you would like to add about how you have been impacted? Is there anything else that you want to share about your opinions on either the immigration, the tariff side, or the overall outlook for businesses in Orange County? So starting with the immigration policy side here, we saw a few recurrent themes, which I think shouldn't be surprising to folks. The first was about widespread fear and anxiety across our communities. So some of these quotations that are on the right-hand side of this and the forthcoming slides are all directly from our survey respondents. They are anonymized, but we did want to put the industry and the city up here so you could get a sense of this across the different businesses in the county. So we can see for this first one that somebody is saying directly customers are afraid to come out due to the ICE raids. So just directly, that is what they are seeing in their businesses. Somebody else saying it's impacted their overall mental health and well-being, that it's uncomfortable for them just living in this place besides trying to operate their small business. We also see economic decline and business disruption. So Dr. Lester will speak to this a bit more later in some of his forthcoming kind of preliminary research. But we're seeing somebody even mentioning here a business decline in 40%. And this was back in September, so we're not sure how they're doing at this point. But at least to that point, it had negatively impacted them. We're also seeing labor shortages, some folks not coming into work, or sometimes even businesses having decreased hours that they're open, and general instability. There's also an operational and administrative burden for some small business owners whose employees are being more directly impacted by this. There's somebody who had a deported subcontractor, obviously terrible for that person, but also the business is impacted as well. And then lastly, we're seeing kind of from the different quotes on the bottom here, deep political and community division around these topics, which we can expect as well. And on the side of, we did ask people another question, which was, what, if anything, do you think that the county government can do to try to support you if your business is facing any impacts? And for that, we saw a few recurrent themes as well. Obviously, people want to feel safe as the first thing, so that's just working with our local governments in that front. And the second was more toward the federal government side of things of immigration reform and creating legal pathways. But what really came up for the county was focus on supporting small businesses and workers. So potentially helping with grants or business loans, as some folks have identified. There's also a need for legal awareness, legal aid, and rights awareness that we can see somebody has mentioned, helping in their business, providing red cards, advocacy material, know your rights trainings, and also mentioned the grant opportunities again. We do see as well, we know that Orange County is a very diverse place where people speak many languages and want communication about kind of the ongoing impacts of immigration and enforcement in our communities, with somebody specifically calling out Spanish and Vietnamese, so we know there are many other languages that we should be providing this information in as well. To move on to some of what we saw about the tariffs, the largest theme here was actually around uncertainty and unpredictability. I don't know about you all, but I don't know the percentages that are currently waged on different countries, and it seems to be changing. So there is a kind of lack of ability for some of these businesses to make decisions with certainty, as we saw from some of what Dr. Lester had shown before as well. Some folks are saying, as the top quote here, that the main impact is caused by the uncertainty of the indecisive tariffs. Retail customers have stopped purchases that can wait, and suppliers have not replenished warehouses due to varying tariffs month to month. We're also seeing economic pain and decline from the tariffs themselves. One person reporting specifically from the tariffs that they had to close, that this was worse than COVID, or at least there was some kind of stimulus packages that were in place, and they just weren't seeing that right now. And as a business that supports ethical labor and pays people fairly, they unfortunately had to close. We see also somebody else reporting a decline in foot traffic in their area of 80%. This is going to be different across some of our communities, and Dr. Lester will speak to that in a moment. And there's continued deep political division. Some folks are supportive of this, of wanting more things made in America, and say that the tariffs are a reason for that, but obviously there is division across the community in regard to personal opinions on this. For some recommended solutions, obviously some folks just want the tariffs removed at the county level. We're not going to be able to do that, but providing financial relief or tax incentives is something that a lot of respondents had brought up as well. Some people specifically requesting grants and not loans. And we also have a sense of wanting a stability and longer term policy consistency, again, so people can make their purchasing and hiring decisions with knowing kind of what is to come. There was also a suggestion of having more kind of buy local campaigns, especially of supporting small businesses in the area, as they're ones that we saw from the survey are typically the most inclined to not be in favor of these policies and to be negatively impacted by them. And there were other things that people brought up in these responses too, of just other local actions they would like to see of people taking to help support the business community as well. And then the last slide that I will be sharing is about people's commentary on the outlook of the future of business in Orange County. Something that we saw was current widespread concern about closures. So as we had seen from some of the respondents, some people did in fact close. Some people were making the decision in the coming months, if they did not already, since we had closed the survey, if they would stay open or not. Somebody up there had mentioned it might face closure by the end of the year. So again, we did not track the specific respondent and wouldn't know if they did end up closing, but this is something that is on the mind of our business community. We do see some frustration with some state and local policies outside of just the federal side too, and high costs, both of just living in Orange County in the first place, but also of all of the associated costs to business from both the tariffs and impact from immigration enforcement and other concerns. We are also seeing some inequality and uneven impact. Again, a lot of impact to small businesses, a lot of reports of impact to more minority-owned businesses as well. But there is still a small spark of optimism from some respondents, as we had seen from what Dr. Lester has shown as well. Some folks are showing some amount of hope, even if they also do have concern. We see some people saying that that Orange County really has a strong, innovative economy, and that the diverse markets and the diversity of folks here actually contributes to that being strong and positive for the future. So time will tell, but at least these are the opinions of the folks that we saw, and just wanted to have this again to add some color to some of what we had seen earlier. But I'm actually going to pass it back to Dr. Lester now to show some preliminary results from additional follow-on research he has done related to the impacts of ICE enforcement on both foot traffic and revenue in the county.
Thanks you again for the time. This is just a little bit of an aside. This is very happy to be involved in this project because this is what I like about what I call community engaged research. That through being a part of this, like I started in UCI in July, discussions were already going on for this survey, and Raven just asked me to come and help. But for reading the survey responses, I got an idea for another paper, and a whole new paper which I hopefully will get published. So it generates new ideas, or new research topics, new things I want to look into. So it's been a pleasure to be a part of this. So, start with the slide. So I just want to say, this is very, very preliminary. We're still working on it. My colleagues, Eli Knapp and Matt Wilson, are still working on this. But what we did, inspired by the survey project, was to try to quantify what are the impacts of the ice raids, and particularly focusing on the LA, Orange County metropolitan area. And we were reading through the survey responses that there's a chilling effect, that people are saying to us, people aren't showing up to my business. Or I hear anecdotally from friends even that I'm just not going out, right? When people are not going out, well, that means they're not spending money. Can we actually kind of quantify that? We hear that anecdotally, but this is what we want to do. So we want to qualify what we call the chilling effect of the enhanced ICE enforcement. And I knew from another project I was working on that there are great new data sets based on cell phone mobility data. So one measures the number of visits that you can go to each business. So anything you can kind of put into Google Maps, because it's called a POI, or point of interest, we can measure how many times that place gets visited every week, even almost down to the hour. So we have measures of foot traffic, and then there's a separate data set that can measure basically a sample of people who have a certain financial institution that they swipe their credit card, we know how much they spend at a business. So we can get a gauge of weekly spending at each business level as well. So with this data, we basically performed an event study. So we started with the day, May 14th of this summer, early summer, as the sort of treatment date. And this was the date that the Department of Homeland Security announced hundreds of arrests. And then 2 weeks later, there was, through increased enforcement all throughout, you had the disruptions in downtown Los Angeles of June 6th. So this was, in the news every day. People are being taken off the street. This created the almost public hysteria around the chilling effect. So we use that date as our treatment date, and we gather that visitor information at businesses 8 weeks before, what's happening before that big ICE presence, and what happens up to 8 weeks later. And that's called an event study. And the place that we're calling the treated areas are neighborhoods, this is census block groups, that have the highest decile of percent foreign born from Latin America. Because we're seeing that ICE is not going after everybody, but particularly focusing on that community. We said, okay, those are the likely to be the most impacted areas, and we compare them to the places in the lowest decile of percent foreign born from Latin America. So that's the two different groups that we're going to be comparing, groups of neighborhoods, right? So really the unit of observation is neighborhood business communities, right? And so through that, we're able to do what's called a difference in difference analysis, is to look at the difference between that treated and control group over time, and what happens to the trend. So I'm just going to walk over here for a second. Before May 14th, it's sort of close to zero, and the standard errors include zero. So we can say that there's really no difference in trend in their trends in business spending. But after that, about 2 weeks later, we start to see a sharp decline, and these are negative down to about negative 0.2, which is roughly a % change. And you say, just to one robustness check, we might say, well, maybe there's something going on at that time of year, graduations or something. That could explain this difference in trend. To rule that out, we looked at the same 8 week before, 8 week after, but in 2024. So before the new administration, there wasn't the sort of increased ICE enforcement. We look at this trend, and it's pretty much a flat line. A little bit of bouncing around, but if you look at that, it's kind of close to zero and centered there. So we conclude that there's a negative impact. Then we sort of said, well, how can we quantify that in terms of overall sales? So that's a % change at the neighborhood level, but let's just back of the envelope calculation to see how much money that is overall. So for the entire LA, Orange County combined metro area, we're talking about a loss of about $625 million in economic, basically sales. Drilling down to Orange County, that's $58.5 million in lost sales, just in these targeted neighborhoods, right? And then if we think about how much tax would have been collected on that sales tax, That's about $4.5 million. And again, this includes the state share, but also a portion that's going to be going to Orange County itself or whatever local city it goes to. So this, like I said, the very preliminary findings, but we're very excited about this. We're going to keep working on it. There's a new regression running on my computer as we speak. I'll come back and check it later, but I'm happy to take questions about this, and as well as the survey. Thank you. Oh,
Thank you, that was really interesting. I'm sure that sparked some questions, so I think we have a few minutes for questions. We were supposed to have a microphone, I apologize, we don't, but anybody who has a question, you can raise your hand and stand up, and if you don't mind speaking loudly so the room can hear you, and we can have somebody from our team repeat the question, whoever's closest to you. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Hi everyone, Joanna here representing Cielo. We support entrepreneurs here in Orange County. Thank you for the presentation and for the survey. So for my question, based on the improvements and recommendations that were gathered through the survey, are there any that the district does plan to implement? More specifically, will the district work towards implementing relief assistance for small business owners? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. And I think what I'll do is I'll piggyback on to just understanding what the impact is. And I think that was the value of the survey and the findings was we know this is a national impact that's having stressors on our country's economy. But what is the impact to our region? So to drill down on that, the policies on having some sort of relief effort, I think the point was really well made when we were talking, or somebody was revealing the study or a survey response from one of the business owners who said during the pandemic there was some relief effort. There was very large packages. I think it was the American Rescue Plan that provided relief to businesses and individuals that were going through a tough time. That's no longer available to us. So we depend upon the federal and state government to fund efforts like that. And those relief efforts don't seem to be anywhere in sight. In fact, our resources are being diminished as we speak. Federal employees, state employees, local employees are going through a very difficult time. So we're going through a moment of contraction rather than one of stability and definitely not expansion. So right now, what locals are trying to do, and I'm the chair of Cal Optima because we're dealing with, obviously changes to our healthcare system when it comes to Medicare and Medi-Cal. We're trying to see how we can at least stabilize some people who are falling off their healthcare coverage and trying to backfill. But that is a very unfair place to put local government because we don't generate the amount of dollars in funding that the federal government does because they really keep us all afloat. So I wish I had a more defined response, but we are unfortunately at the whim of these changing policies that make it very difficult for us to provide any sort of relief effort.
Thank you for that question. I think I saw someone else's hand up.
Hello, my name is Devin Jones, and I am actually a local small business in the city of Tustin. I'm in entrepreneurship as far as my authorship with writing books. And my question today in regards to what I understand is also being a part of American Legion is going back to Robert's rules in recognition to Article 8, Section 47 and 48. How is the political view as far as Democrats and Republicans coming together to unite in order to vote in more, I would feel, the democracy that has to come together to help both the order of checks and balances and stabilize the structure of the congruencies that we're seeing in the safeguard of political corruptions and that protects anything revolving around future foundations for education, transportation, as well as what we're seeing here economically.
So that is a very complicated question, and I wish I had the answer to that, but thank you for asking it. I think it's sort of a, we're living in a time, and my family arrived here in Orange County in 1965 when I was a year old, so I just told you all my age. But what it does, I guess, harken back to is, like, I've never lived or experienced, and many of us haven't lived in an environment like this, where there is so much division on how to approach a problem that to us seems very basic, right? It's affordability and being able to stay in a county that we love, and being able to afford to not just do business, but to reside here. So many people have experienced difficulties in just being able to afford rent, groceries, and basic needs. That's something that's nonpartisan. That's something that I think all of us believe in a thriving economy of more than 3 million people here in Orange County, it being the 3rd largest county in the state, the 6th largest in the country. We should be able to resolve that problem because it's probably one of the most beautiful places to live. People want to stay here. Nobody wants to be displaced and have to move. But we're seeing more people leave our county than enter our county, which is something that's very disturbing, right? Because we know that that balance between skilled labor force and unskilled labor forces, that is a very tricky balance when we lose that. So more people who are unskilled are just finding it very difficult to afford to reside in this county. So families are struggling with having their children being able to stay in a place that they were raised in. And unfortunately, that's a reality for many. But if we could reconcile the partisan differences that we have, I think a lot of this could be solved. And unfortunately, we're living at a time when I think we have leadership at the very top that is really dismantling a lot of what we thought we all understood, which were some satisfying basic needs that our residents here in the country really rely on.
Thank you. Please, go ahead.
Jorge from Ultimate Health Services. As most of our clinics are in Orange County or in your district, thank you for this information. I think this particular conversation has been missing from the overall conversation that has been happening. So my curiosity, and maybe this is more of a question for our folks at UCI, is there any plan to see if like showing people this data changes their minds? Because I think a lot of it is very political based, right? And I think maybe, and I genuinely want to know, like, once people were exposed to this, like, did this make them think in a different way? So.
Great idea. What I can tell you is that we are going to have a poll in the field in March on the very question of immigration. The results for that are going to be released in conjunction with an event that the Orange County Community Foundation and Charitable Ventures are hosting in April on the very question of what's happening on the issue of immigration in Orange County. So there will be an opportunity then to have those kinds of conversations.
If I could add, Jorge, to your question, I think, one of the reasons why I think we were compelled to even, tackle, a task like this was because we saw that some people aren't moved by what they see. I think many of our collective consciences are shocked by what we see, but some aren't because maybe there's more of a distance or disconnect from what we're seeing with increased, immigration enforcement. But all of us are impacted, in some way. And tariffs impact us, and changing federal policies, economic policies, affect us all. So it's almost removing the emotion and the passion from the question and having the data and the analysis brought forward to say, whether you agree with it or not, you certainly are going to be impacted negatively, right? Because we see that. I see that we focus in on the workforce challenges because so many of our industries like construction, hospitality rely on an immigrant workforce, and many of them undocumented. But what we see is that it's also the consumer base, because what's not measured is the purchasing power of the immigration population, or the immigrant population. And I know the MacArthur Foundation did a study years ago when I was a new council member here in Santa Ana, and there's a lot of people who are underbanked and unbanked, right? They don't use our system because of fear. So there is money in the immigrant and undocumented community that sustains businesses. So to the extent that that's disrupted, it has ripple effects across the board, and it multiplies, right? So Whether we like the immigration policy or not, or agree or disagree, it is going to have an impact to all our lives. So that was, for me, I guess, the goal of this study, to say, you don't have to have an emotional or a passionate response. You just simply have to look at the data and the analysis to understand.
And if I guess we're gonna have the dog and pony show here. To piggyback on that, first of all, as I said earlier, the fact that we were asked to do a study that was up to academic standards and was empirical, that's impressive to come out of government. But that's the part about the effect on businesses. I want to just make sure we get the takeaway from this last slide that Professor Lester put up there. So Bill, I want to see if I put this in words, whether I'm getting this right. And this is, you can tell this is a guy who loves regression models. It's a special kind of guy to like a regression model. So if I have this right, what you're looking at here is the effects in communities in Orange County and Los Angeles that have the highest number of Latino residents, and what's happened to business activity in the 8 weeks where ICE is most active. And what you're seeing is, at least in Orange County, that there is a reduction in sales of $58 million. $58 million in 8 weeks, with a resulting loss of about $4.5 million in sales tax revenue. So do I have that right so far?
90%.
Okay.
So it's not just the neighborhoods that have the highest share of Latino, it's that they're foreign born from Latin America.
Okay.
So that's the one minor difference.
All right. Do we know whether this has continued or not?
That's a good question. Under the analysis that I ran so far, I'm only looking at that 8-week period, so I can't definitively answer that. Anecdotally, we're still seeing that people are scared, right? So is it down? Is it 20%? Is it trickled back up? I think people are starting to become adaptive a little bit, of like sending out one household member to do the shopping. So I can't measure that directly, although with this data set, there is some measure of dwell time, how much time people spend in a store, and has that changed? So this is lots of new paper ideas here coming out of this conversation. But one of the things that my colleague is doing now is looking at the residents side of things. So we know when you enter a store, the store is in a certain neighborhood, but we also know that from that store, where do their customers come from throughout the whole metropolitan area? So we're now going to look at the residential side. That's the next stage, to say, are there just less trips coming out of these zones, right? And so that's another way to get at the same question. But my impression is that the effects are going on longer, but I don't have a number attached to it.
Well, let me take a leap of faith here as the non-academic up here at this table. They are going on, and so they are going on well beyond the 8 weeks. And I think the indicia that has been shared with us gives you a moment in time. But we know that businesses can't survive for us, for any sustained long period of time. And I'll give you an example, because I'm looking at the city manager from Santa Ana here. He understands that those merchants in the downtown area not only are dealing with the impacts of changing tariffs, increased immigration enforcement, but on the heels of a pandemic that shuttered them for over a year. Right after that, there was construction of the Orange County's first streetcar. Right after that, for another year. So you were talking about difficulties and challenges that were so unpredictable, at some point, that it is hard for a non-franchise business, non-franchise or non-chain business, an independently owned mom and pop shop to be able to sustain over time. So I know that I just think that 8-week period gives us a glimpse and a small sample size of what probably is a much, much larger number.
Hi, Hugh Nguyen, nonprofit consultant. How did you define business or businesses? Was it commercial only or nonprofit as well?
So that's a great question. I think if we went back to that slide, which I don't have the clicker, but there was a percent who identified as nonprofits who had been in this, but we did really put this out suggesting that it be targeted toward business owners in particular. So as business owners and business executives who had to have their business located in or serving Orange County communities. So it could have been one or more cities within the county, but that was kind of the criteria. There were some nonprofits who had answered the survey as well, but it was a much smaller number.
So it's pretty much the findings for commercial businesses.
Correct.
We're hitting around 3 o'clock, but how many questions do we have? I think just last one, or are there any other questions? 2 questions. Okay, we can take those 2 questions. Go ahead.
Are you sure? Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon.
Isa Camarillo, Research Director at the UCI Labor Center. And one thing that really stuck out to me, by the way, amazing survey, but there was a mention of the USMCA in a testimony quote. The USMCA being the North American Free Trade Agreement between Canada, Mexico, and the US, and the person quoted said that, to push for the USMCA existing. With the mandatory revision period coming up any day now, and this current administration's push for bilateral negotiations that have given rise to tariffs, are there plans to maybe continue a survey like this for the USMCA, with California being such a crucial state?
So more work for us, huh?
More good ideas.
One of the beautiful things about being able to participate in events like this and projects like this is we get all kinds of great ideas for new surveys to do. And if any of you out there have ideas for surveys, and most importantly, have the resources to help cover the cost of those surveys, we are delighted to talk further about them.
Please go ahead.
So my question is, if I'm understanding the survey right, that the impact that you measured was solely on the areas that had foreign-born populations?
The highest decile, so
The
the highest
highest decile.
10% of census block groups
Right,
in
so-
the whole 2-county area.
But that's not the survey.
Yeah, that's
So
a
the
separate-
survey is across the entire county, business leaders. This last slide, the last couple slides that Professor Lester showed you was of additional analysis he has been doing about foot traffic for businesses and the resulting credit card purchases.
Two separate projects, but yeah, that's the answer to the
So
question.
for your additional research, are there plans, or is there data that shows what the overall impact is across the county, not just in those high decile areas?
That's certainly possible. The reason I chose to do it that way is I wanted to try and find what areas were being treated by this policy, right? Most affected. So to do that difference, I need to have kind of a treatment group and a control group to the best extent possible. But we could do another regression that looks at like just the percent foreign born as a continuous variable, and to see that way. So that's one of a colleague recommended that I do that, so that would answer that question to you. The problem with that is that you lose some of the ability to identify that stark differences. I'm using that highest decile, lowest decile to see, ideally we'd love to have the actual physical geography of where the ICE enforcement actions were. And I know some community groups were tracking that, but I wasn't able to find in a quick enough shorter amount of time, like a database that I could access to say, okay, they're on this street corner at this time and this date, because that would be the ideal if I had that data. But that ICE doesn't tell you where they're going to be, right? So that's why we're doing it just that rather crude way of saying neighborhoods that have high versus low. But the fact that we're finding anything with this sort of like not ideally measured treatment is still, I think, interesting to me.
I guess if I could just add on, what I would be curious to know is what the impact of these treatments are on all of Orange County, whether or not there was a treatment in that particular neighborhood. Because as you said, the ripple effects of what happens in one area does impact the rest of the county, and it would be interesting, for me at least, to understand what that impact is on other businesses and other areas that may not have direct treatments happening in them to put that treatment.
That's a really good idea, but your comment points out a larger issue, which is that we are kind of all connected, even if this effect is only in those top 10% neighborhoods, and we're still finding that $58 million, which leads to $4.5 million lost sales taxes. well, those sales taxes go to fund county roads everywhere, right? Or they go to the public health system that everybody is affected by. So to say the effect is just limited to that neighborhood would not be accurate. There are these larger ripple effects. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Supervisor Sherman, would you like to give closing thoughts? Oh, are you going to respond to that question? I just saw your microphone was on.
No, these are much too tough questions for me to respond to. I will make sure that we, follow it up with some additional research if we can go ahead and support Irvine in its efforts. But what I do want to say is I would like you all to please give a round of applause to our panelists. Dr. Gold, and I know all the other faculty and students that supported this study. It will be made available, and please let us know if you'd like access to it. I think we.
Can I email it out?
Yes, so Han, our wonderful videographer right here, is recording this, and we'll be posting this to the UC Irvine School of Social Ecology's YouTube page, and we will also upload the slides as a public PDF, and we will share those with Yossi to be able to share with all of those who had registered today too. So even folks who couldn't attend, I'll be publicly accessible for all of them.
And we try to be really respectful of everybody's time. So thank you for spending these few moments with us. We try to share and compress as much information as we could. But I think in the end, what I see sort of the takeaway is we've all seen, and our logic lends us to believe these impacts are going to have some result in our economy here in Orange County. So now it is quantified. We can find it in a digestible way. But we also want to believe that we live in an incredibly beautiful county. And what I would encourage you to do as a takeaway as well, support the local businesses. Don't stop shopping there, because we know that they are going through a very difficult moment. Now is the moment that we all lean in as neighbors and as friends of those small businesses, because they are going through a very, very difficult time. So on behalf of all the 3 million residents that live here in the county that call it home, thank you all for trying to understand this, continue to support our businesses, and to our academics for them trying to allow us to understand it a little bit better. But thank you, everybody. Have a great day and enjoy, and hopefully this survey brought you some good results. Thank you.